Hi guys, it's Mr. Dave with the RayKitty Creation Workshop, and you are watching the RayKitty Science Project. Thanks for watching. We've got some fun science we're going to do here today. Very accessible science, very easy to do with the younger guys, and you can get a lot into the science for some of our older students. Even adults, we all love to play with magnets. So we are going to be talking about magnets today, and I've got a whole bunch of different types of magnets here. Now what I don't have here and what we're not going to be discussing today are electromagnets. And there's a reason for that is I've got an entire episode that will be dedicated to electromagnets, and I will show you how to build a speaker out of a cup and things like that, and that's one of my favorite projects because that's a really fun one, but we'll kind of talk about electromagnets at that point, okay? So what we're talking about today are what are considered permanent magnets or fixed magnets, okay? So these are magnets that will remain magnetic pretty much for a long, long time, okay? Now some of these are a little bit more man-made, and some of these are earth magnets. So we've got different types of magnets that we're going to be looking at. I've got a bunch on my table here, including the most powerful one I was brave enough to bring here into the studio that wouldn't end up ripping the microphone off of my neck or anything like that. So we've got this one here. This one's about a 200-pound magnet. But these magnets here all have different kind of magnetic fields, okay? Now when I say a magnetic field, the field from a magnet will go, will kind of, if you were to imagine, the biggest magnet you can imagine, okay? Imagine a magnet maybe as big as your house, okay? So if you were to, well, let's go bigger, imagine a magnet maybe as big as your, as the Empire State Building, okay? No, I know. Let's do a magnet maybe the size of our planet, kind of like Earth, because surprisingly enough, Earth is a big old magnet. Yes, Earth is a large magnet. Now, I've been teaching a lot this week and last week, and everybody was making fun of my drawings. So if you're at home, you can make fun of my drawings. Just you can send an email and say, Mr. Dave, your drawings are terrible. But let's imagine that this is Earth. It's going to take some imagination, but let's imagine that these are like our little continents and things like that. Don't pick on my artwork. These are continents, okay? No, really, they're continents. And there's a big one up here, and then we kind of just imagine with me, okay? So we have these continents, and we also have a north and a south pole, okay? Just like one of these magnets. These magnets also have a north and a south pole. Okay? Now, the magnetic field from these magnets doesn't just shoot straight one way and straight the other way. Okay? If it did, we'd have a hard time using compasses and navigation and all those kind of things. These magnets, the magnetic field actually makes kind of like a pretty little flower. Okay? So we've got this pretty little flower, only that flower doesn't stop here. The flower continues around, okay? And we have lots of these draw lines. So we have lots of lines in that magnetic field. And that's what ends up giving us to where we can tell when you have a compass, or I know compasses are for old people. If you have your cell phone, okay, this is how your cell phone can tell which way it's going. Or if you look in the rear view mirror of the car and it says you're going northwest, that's because of this, okay? Now, if you happen to be in New Mexico, you know, just because of the mountains, you can tell all of your directions. But if you're elsewhere, then that compass can help, okay? So the Earth is a giant magnet, and we have this magnetic field here, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at that same magnetic field on magnets that are on a lot smaller scale, okay? So I have some magnets here that are, well, a lot smaller than the planet Earth, which is good because I had to fit them in my little bin so I could carry them down the street to get them into the studio. So we've got these magnets here, okay? These little guys are just kind of your standard round magnets that you could buy at the grocery store sometimes, craft stores, those kind of things. So we've got these guys. And I've got these guys that look very similar, okay? Now you'll notice as I'm holding them, I'm already getting a little bit of that play there, right? Those little magnets are already kind of fighting each other just a little bit. You can see that, and we're going to experiment with that just a little bit more. But what we have is polarity, okay? Polarity. So just like we said that planet Earth has got a north pole and a south pole, all of these magnets have got a north pole and a south pole. We have some larger magnets here. Now, parents, teachers, whoever, if you are guiding students with this one, be careful when you're using larger magnets, okay? First, make sure that no one ingests a magnet, okay? One magnet in and of itself will pass, but it can do some damage in the inside, especially if a student or a child were to ingest more magnets, because as you can see, they would, cause problems. So be careful not to put magnets in your mouth. Another kind of thing about these magnets is because they are going to want to snap together, okay? If you're using a little bit stronger magnets with the kiddos, you will want to just be careful with those pinch points. So if we're using stronger magnets, one of the things that I like to do, instead of giving the students just, here's a very strong magnet, I've taped it to a stick, and we call it a magnetic wand, okay? So now we have a magnetic wand. They can also say it's a magic wand because you can do lots of magical things with it, okay? So this little wand here is just a magnet taped to a stick. That's a lot easier way if you are working with those kiddos for them to be able to manipulate these magnets safely. So if you're using a stronger magnet, they're not going to have that risk of being pinched because there's some distance there. Okay, so we have these magnets here. These ferrous magnets are these black ones. You can see them called rare earth magnets or ferrous magnets. These are powerful magnets. They're not some of our most powerful magnets, but they are powerful magnets. Okay, so they can do quite a bit, and we'll show you what they can do in just a minute here. Woohoo! See, I did tell them. Right before we started, I said, watch this. I'm going to end up moving something, and everything's going to come in and pinch my fingers. But it hasn't happened yet. We're going to be careful with them. But we have also here, these ones are a little bit more powerful. Even though they're smaller, these are our neodymium magnets. Okay. Now, these ones are the ones that you would see in a lot of different crafts, or they'll use for latches for things, because for its small size, this is a very strong magnet. Okay. Now, that's kind of the types of magnets we have here. I have different shapes that I'll be using, different sizes, that kind of thing, but those are the basics, okay? So let's talk about this magnet. Now, this little bitty guy here, even though it's just a teensy tiny little magnet, we still have that same magnetic field like we had when we showed you with that planet Earth. It's still got a magnetic field that kind of flowers around. Now, a fun way of showing this, kind of a shout out to my brother and my sister-in-law. They're always buying me cool science stuff because they know that I geek out on that. This right here is a magnetic field viewer. Okay. Now, what it is it is essentially little bitty micro ferrous or iron kind of shavings. And what happens is when they become energized by that field of the magnet, we can now see those colors there. So we can actually see the magnetic field, okay? Now those rings, all those fun colors there, are different intensities or different strengths of that magnet, okay? Now we can see that I have this one magnet here, and it's got that kind of big aura there, okay? And that shows that that's a pretty strong magnet. One of these guys here that is a lot larger, when we put it back there, we can see that is a much smaller aura. That outside there, that field is not nearly as large. And when we move it away, we can kind of see that flowering like we were talking about. Okay? So when we have a stack of them, okay, a fun thing about magnets is one magnet is fun. You're like, yay, I can stick it to the metal, I can stick it to the fridge, I can stick it to, but two magnets are a lot more fun. Okay, now it is exponentially more fun when you have way more magnets. So when we've got a lot of magnets here, we'll see that our field is stronger because we've added more magnets. Now, way out here, I'm instead of being right by it, I'm actually way about that far away. Okay, so when we're that far away, we can already begin to see that field. Okay, and we see those bright, pretty colors there showing the different Gauss strength of the magnet. Okay, Gauss is a measurement of strength in a magnet. You may have heard the term Gauss rifle. That's actually a magnetic rifle. But when we turn this here, you can see that pretty, like, it looks like maybe those drawings of an atom. But what we see there is that magnetic field. Okay, now we didn't have enough energy in that one magnet, or enough Gauss in that one magnet to show that field, but using a stack of those same magnets, we have a big old field that we're able to see there. Okay, now this, if you're looking for it, this is a fairly inexpensive object that you can purchase. You can find it online. Some of your stores, your hobby stores, will have them here in town, but a magnetic field viewer can show you a lot. Now, what we're seeing here is with these types of magnets, we have that one strong area, and then we have that field that kind of goes around it. I'm making contact with just the end of my magnet now. When I turn my magnet sideways, okay, and I come up, we're going to see the ends there have got that strong field, and you can see it kind of moving around. We have like an energy caterpillar going on there in the center, and we can see how those fields are kind of interrupted by the next magnet. Okay? Now, if we were to do that with a solid magnet, okay, this is roughly the same size, okay? But this is one magnet rather than a stack of those magnets. So if we were to do that with one magnet, we would see that that field, we get those wiggles in the middle, but we don't have that stop, start, okay? So we can see all of that there on that field of that magnet, okay? And so what we're seeing there is we're seeing, just like we showed on that planet Earth, those giant circles happening around that magnet, okay? So that's a little bit about how magnets work. If you're looking for one of these, it is a magnetic field viewer. When you purchase one, it usually shows you stuff like this about the strength of the magnet and things like that. So if you're looking for a good, inexpensive science tool for teaching magnets to your students or even at home, this is a fun one, okay? So we're going to get that one out of the way because now we are going to get to where we are actually like playing with our magnets, okay? Because that's what it's all about. Now, with our magnets, I'm going to be using a couple different things and showing a couple fun things to do that you can do at home with magnets that you can either purchase or you may already have. Now, this roll here is actually a roll of magnetic tape, okay? Now, this magnetic tape, what's interesting about it, I'm actually going to pull that viewer out again real quick. What's interesting about it is that field is not constant on this tape. So I'm going to show you something. This tape is actually pressed magnet, so it is a created magnet. And if you look there, you can see that we have little bitty stripes in that magnet, okay? So instead of that field being nice and even, we can see that that magnetic field is actually comprised of a whole bunch of stripes, okay? So as we hold it on there, one, we can see it is not very strong. I have to be in contact for that magnetic energy to show up. But in addition to that, we can see that as they print it, when they press all these magnets together, they're all pressed together in a strip. Now, you can't see that on here because that's that little magnetic energy, but you can see those fields. And if you have something like this and you look very close up, you can see that entire rainbow in every little strip because we go from a high intensity to a low intensity in every one of those lines, okay? So these kind of magnets that we have here are not very powerful, but there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with those too, okay? So we're going to start by seeing how magnetism works and how magnetism is different than a lot of different energies, okay? Now, magnetism has no problem traveling through most materials, okay? And so a fun thing that you can do with that is to make I have a little fuzzy guy here that I made. Cute little guy there. It's a little soot sprite. And so I've got my little soot sprite here. And what I'm going to do is, if I were you guys at home, I would glue the magnet on, but for sake of time, I'm going to use a little bit of tape. He won't mind. So I'm going to tape a magnet on the bottom of our little soot sprite. Okay? Now, what you can do, there's different ways, but we'll make just a little like maze for our soot sprite. Okay? So it's got to go through this little maze here. There's a simple maze just for the sake of illustration. Okay? Now, what you can do, because a magnet can travel right through another material, if I were to hold a magnet on the back of this board, that magnetic field can travel through our material. This is just made of kind of a pressed cardboard type material, and so we're able to move that around. Okay? A fun thing to do, especially with the little guys, is to make a little critter, because it's always more fun when you've got a little critter. And now we can make our little soot sprite go through our maze, right? So now it is trying to escape that weird spider old man thing, and the little soot sprite is running around on our board. Now, you can see it's also erasing my maze because soot sprites are cheaters. Yeah, you can see that. They'll go right through those lines. But there's a lot of different little things you can do with this, especially with the younger guys. The older students will find this fun for, okay, yeah, that was fun. No, but just for a little bit, and then you'll say, okay, well, let's see what else we can do. But we're seeing that that can penetrate this material. Okay. Now, that being said, there was a thing going around on the internet that magnets don't work in water. Okay. Maybe you heard this on the internet, and we want to see if that is in fact true. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take I'm actually going to use one of my weaker magnets just because I don't want to end up shattering my glass. So I've got a weaker magnet here. I'm going to put this behind it. I will just rest it on my belly for a minute. And that's just so you guys can see that magnet. But we're going to take that magnet and we are going to, bloop, drop it in the water. Okay. Now, you can't see it too much right now, but if I were to slide it up here, you can see that that magnet is very much interacting with this other magnet, showing that the water does not impair the magnet at all. Okay? That magnetic field can go right through that water. So if you have heard that magnets don't work in the water, this is a fun little demonstration to show that magnets do in fact work underwater. Okay, so that one there is a fun one. If you are doing that, a way of kind of having fun with it is to, let me get my one magnet out of there. Zoop. Ha. And we're going to put some of these guys in here. BBs. Okay. Now these BBs here are steel BBs, which means they are ferrous. And so we can have a lot of fun in that water with these steel BBs. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I am going to attach this little magnet to some of those BBs and see if we can move them around in that water, see if we can pick those guys up, and you can play with those BBs. We now have a solid mass of magnet on the bottom that we've now created, because those BBs, when they're touching, now they are all their own little magnet. So instead of just being the power of one BB, that is a lot of magnetic power there. You can see it pulling on the glass. Okay. Those magnets are now those BBs are all now like one big magnet, because all of the little bitty ions in there, okay, in our ferrous material, you have lots of ions that have positives and negatives, right? So you've got your positive and negatives, but they're kind of all jumbled around in there, okay? Kind of like these BBs are all jumbled around in there, okay? And like right now, they would be easy to stir around because nothing's really sticking them together, okay? So they're easy to stir around, they're easy to separate. But what happens when you expose a ferrous material like these BBs, okay? And ferrous just means it has iron in it, okay? When you expose it to a magnet, now I will try and do this gently so I don't break my wife's glass here, but now you can see that those those BBs have a hard time separating from each other, and they're all acting like one piece of material because they're all their own little bitty magnets. So you can see that how they're sticking together and they're piling up because each of those little bitty BBs have now become a magnet. Okay? So not only do magnets work underwater, we can also see that you can generate or create a new magnet with that magnet. Okay? And the same way, kind of a fun way of demonstrating that is these paper clips. Okay? This is a fun one again with the younger kiddos. If you get a paper clip and stick it onto the magnet, just like in here, now I have another magnet. Okay? And we know that it's a magnet because I can stick another paper clip to it. Okay? And then let's see. Another one. Now I'm not hooking these together, they're just making contact because it's magnetic. Now you can see by this one here, okay, that those ions are aligned, they're a little weaker, a little bit weaker. By this one here, I don't have too much, okay? So what we're gonna try is to use a bigger magnet, okay? Now this one here, as I said, was a larger magnet. This is a fishing magnet. If you want to go magnet fishing, which is where you throw a magnet, surprisingly enough, in the water, it still works, and then you end up pulling a bicycle or an iron or whatever out of it, or bomb parts. I don't know, kind of weird. But this is a magnet fishing magnet, and so it's a lot more powerful. So if we do the same thing, okay, and we stick this guy on here, we should be able to stick more of the paper clips together, okay, just because of the strength of our magnet. Okay, so because this magnet is a lot stronger, we're able to add more and more of these. Okay, so we were able to get about 2 more than we were with the other one. We would be able to get more, but our point of contact is teensy weensy. You can see that there's a very small point of contact there. Okay, now as long as it's, now I have a large point of contact. As long as it's in that magnetic field, it's going to stay magnetic. So I'm going to put one on there just like we did before, okay? And we've got that little point of contact. I stuck another one to it. Now watch this. Even though it's not contacting it, okay, as long as that field is strong enough, remember that field goes right through the air. As long as that field is strong enough, I can separate these and I still have that magnetic properties on this next one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to see how far we can get. So I'm going to continue to move this magnet away. Now, there's the possibility that we have now magnetized our paper clip. Okay? So what's happened is we've created somewhat of a temporary magnet out of this paper clip. Okay? So using that powerful magnet, we aligned those ions and now they've stayed. They've stuck. Okay? So I may be able to see if that's still magnetic. Those properties are a little bit weaker, but now I've created a new magnet just from it interacting with our big strong magnet. So I've got this one here. I don't think I'll be able to stick another one on, but just for the sake of trying, yeah, there's no, we'll see if it's still got a field down here. Yeah, a little bit. You can see we've got a little bit. It's not quite strong enough to pick that paper clip up, but we still have a little bit of a magnetic field there. Okay, so our magnets, what we did there was we had created a new magnet by interacting with that other one. We aligned those ions and we did them strong enough that they stuck, okay, so that they stayed like that. So what we're going to do now is, this is a fun one. We are here in Albuquerque, and in Albuquerque we have dirt, okay. So I have some dirt here, okay. Everybody loves dirt. Dirt is wonderful unless you are trying to grow grass or something like that. So in this very fancy little trading card case of dirt, I've got this sand here. This is just dirt that I dug up from my yard. In New Mexico, really just about anywhere you go, the dirt that you dig up will have these same properties. Now, there are little sticks and rocks and things in there, and that's okay. You can just go get a cup of dirt when you are at home. And we're going to look through this dirt here using our magnet, and we're going to see that we actually have that ferrous material. We actually have iron here in this dirt. Okay? Now, as I'm moving this around a little bit, Let me see, I'm going to shake that around, shake it around, shake it around. I'm going to try not to get too much on my table. But what you're going to be able to see is I'm actually separating out. We can see some of that dirt moving with my magnet. And what that is that's iron. Okay? The iron is great for the soil. The iron is good for our plants. The iron is good for our bodies. And we have lots of iron in our dirt here in New Mexico. So you can see here, just going a couple times, that I've separated quite a bit of that iron just by going underneath that board. Okay? Now, if you are at home and if you want to do this one with the kiddos and you don't have a big, strong magnet, one thing you can do is just get a magnet and throw it in the dirt, and that's fine. But it gets a little tricky when you want to get those little iron pieces off of your little magnet. So a trick for doing that is going to be put your magnet in a baggie. Okay? I put a magnet in a baggie. Now watch this. Okay? This magnet in the baggie, I'm going to just kind of rub around in this dirt. Okay? Again, this is not a special dirt. This is just regular old dirt. And you can see on my magnet already, I gathered quite a bit of those iron shavings. Okay? Now you can go through, this is a fun one, especially it's getting a little warmer outside. Send the kids out with a magnet and a baggie. And you can end up with quite a bit of these iron shavings, and you can use those for different ways of showing that magnetic field and working with that magnetism. So when you separate that iron, just keep moving it around and you will get cleaner and cleaner iron. And then eventually you'll have a nice little cup of iron that you can use to make spikes with, and you can do all kinds of fun stuff with your magnets. Now, the last thing I want to just point out before we wrap up is you can't break a magnet. Now, this is a broken magnet. Wait, I thought you couldn't break a magnet. You can't separate a positive from a negative. Okay? When you break a magnet, you don't have a positive side and a negative side. You have a positive and a negative, a positive and a negative. Now I have two magnets. I don't have half of a magnet and half of a magnet. Every time you break a magnet, all the way down to the molecular level, you will have another magnet. So we can see how these ones are opposing each other, just like those other magnets were, even though these are two halves of the same magnet. Okay? So we learned a little bit about magnetism. This is some fun, easy stuff to do at home. The one warning I do have, or two warnings, I guess, make sure the little guys aren't eating the magnets. And if you are using more powerful magnets, make sure you're either wearing gloves or you have something separating you from those magnets. Have a good time with magnets. My name is Mr. Dave. And always remember that science shows you matter.